How's it going, people? Salmon Slappy here, and this is Runescape lore. So we're carrying on with our showcase on the Majharrat, and today we're going to be taking a bit of a closer look at one named Jhallan. Now, Jhallan himself was a follower of Zaros. When Zamorak and Zaros fought against each other, the Majharrat split apart and Jhallan remained loyal towards Zaros. However, he's not really held within high regards between most of his other kin. He is just as old as them, and you actually first encounter Jhallan during the Tale of the Muspah quest. However, he does appear in front of you in the form of a Muspah. Jhallan himself is well known to be a bit of a pacifist, and proof of this is the fact that he hid under the ritual site for the Majharrat within a block of ice to try and avoid being sacrificed during the ritual of rejuvenation. However, as we know, this did prove to be fruitless. Jhallan himself is described by Azanadra as being rude and sneaky, and thus had trouble fitting in with the other Zarosian Majharrat. This becomes most evident when he is first encountered during the Tale of Muspah, as, after he shapeshifts back into his true form, he is quick to tell the adventurer who found him that he has plans to make, and to go away as their constant blathering is distracting him. Jhallan only started acting slightly more polite when he realised that he needed the adventurer's help, as he had become extremely weak during his slumber, and made the excuse that he was rude because he was startled and tired. Jhallan himself, though, does seem to think very little of humans, simply describing them as feeble-minded, and saying that the adventurer that he met was intelligent for a human. Azanadra also describes Jhallan as being fiercely loyal towards Zaros though, and a fairly good warrior back in his day too. However, by the time of the 5th Age, Jhallan had grown weary of battle. As he had seen so much violence within his life, Jhallan tried to avoid battles at all costs, which in turn led him to hiding beneath the ritual site, and his eventual discovery and sacrifice. Azanadra, upon hearing of Jhallan being alive at the time, expressed affection to him, and decided to aid him at the coming ritual. Jhallan, much like the rest of the Majharrat, originated from a war-torn plane known as freneskae, and came into Gielinor due to Icthllarin, and also came to Gielinor with many of his brothers and sisters. This was during the 2nd Age, when Icthllarin, a Menethite god of the dead, travelled to the freneskae plane in an attempt to find forces to try and ward off the advancing armies of Zaros. And in turn, after promising the Majharrat much glory, they accepted and arrived within Gielinor. However, Jhallan's role was never really a major one during this time. Not much is known of his actual events and what he did. And the same is true for the god-wars of the 3rd Age. Eventually, after Zamorak returned to Gielinor after being banished in the end of the 2nd Age, now a god and more powerful than ever, Zamorak, angered at losing his Stone of Jazz, attacked the other gods in the hope of reclaiming it, which in turn started the cataclysmic God Wars of the 3rd Age. And it was during this time that Jhallan and many other Zarosians were persecuted. And this was due to the efforts of the Zamorakians and the Saradominists to wipe all trace of Zaros from the world, out of sheer fear, or maybe out of malice. Jhallan's exact role, though, during this war period is rather unknown. Not much is actually written about Jhallan himself, and not many remain from that time. However, what we do know is most of the Zarosians either went into hiding or were simply annihilated or captured. Whatever Jhallan's role then, the amount of violence and battle he saw during this time must have changed him somewhat, as he said, according to Azanadra, to become weary of battle, and indeed trying to avoid it at all costs. Eventually though, towards the end of the 3rd Age, Guthix, the god of balance, awoke and ended the wars, in turn creating the Edicts of Guthix, which meant the gods were now unable to interfere directly with Gielinor. Most Majharrat then began to search for Guthics after he went back to sleep in order to kill him and allow the return of either Zamorak or Zaros depending on their allegiances. However, none of their hunts were successful, and eventually they just ceased searching for Guthics. After the God Wars have ended, and Jhallan's aversion to battle caused him to grow weaker and weaker, with the other Majharrat beginning to view him as more of a pathetic sight, with Zamorgul remarking that he was ashamed to even call him a Majharrat. Due to this, he was viewed as an excellent choice for the next sacrifice. As such, Jhallan chose not to attend the 17th ritual of rejuvenation, which had the effect of weakening him even further compared to his brothers. Since not attending the rituals of rejuvenation would eventually prove fatal to him, and actually attending would inevitably lead to him being sacrificed, Jhallan decided to try and copy a trick previously attempted by the Majharrat Lamistad. In preparation for a ritual, Lamistad had tunneled underneath the ritual site in order to be close enough to the ritual marker to actually be rejuvenated. But this was without him having to actually participate within the ritual. However, this did lead to his downfall, as he was eventually discovered and sacrificed during the 16th ritual of rejuvenation, after accidentally tunneling into the basement of Zamorgul's fortress. However, seeing Lamistad's mistake, Jhallan decided to hide in a natural cave instead, choosing to encase himself in a block of ice in a cave near the Snowy Hunt area, found just to the southwest of the ritual site. Jhallan slept in this block of ice for many a year, but eventually had a nightmare which caused him to shapeshift into a Muspah, a legendary beast from Majharrat folktales. Jhallan was eventually discovered by an adventurer exploring an icy cave while helping a young Fremenik, Uriof, pass his Fremenik trials. Uriof saw the Muspah encased in ice on an unreachable island in the middle of the cave, and decided it must be some long-lost armor, or some other treasure he could use as a trophy to present to the Fremenik. With this, he hoped he could bypass the trials entirely. When the adventurer made a path to the island and examined the monster though, not knowing what it was, Uriof suggested that they travel to a nearby natural historian who was hunting yetis. After hearing a description of the creature, the historian claimed that it was a mythical creature, as a creature with the proportions described simply could not exist. It was the kind of creature you would often find in folktales, recalling reports of a statue in the Caribbean desert with a similarity to the creature. He sent the adventurer there to try and find it, hoping it could shed some light on what the creature was. After the adventurer arrived there and uncovered the statue, they encountered the Zarosian Majharrat Wahisiatul, who was disguised as a scholar by the name of Ali the Wise. Ali claimed to have also been searching for the statue, and was shocked when the adventurer claimed to have actually encountered the creature in the flesh. Wahisiatul identified the creature as a Muspah, a nightmarish monster from Majharrat folklore. Suspecting some Majharrat magic at work, Wahisiatul tasked the adventurer with investigating the creature and reporting their findings back to him. Using a spell Wahisiatul taught them, the adventurer unfroze the Muspah, which began to move, causing Uriof to run away in fear. Jhallan, unaware of what he was and unable to remember anything, demanded the adventurer tell him what he was. Upon hearing he had turned into a Muspah, he regained his memory and transformed back into his true form. Jhallan proceeded to rudely bark at the adventurer to go away, before realizing transforming into the Muspah had drained his already depleted power immensely. Realizing he needed their help, he calmed down and explained what had happened to him. He had had a nightmare about the Muspah while slumbering, causing him to transform into one, surprisingly enough. He proceeded to tell the adventurer of the ritual and how he needed their help to re-enter his hibernation. This time closer to the ritual marker in an area he would not be disturbed. Jhallan was able to use his remaining strength to travel to a cave just north of the ritual site. and, upon being led by the adventurer to a suitable area directly under the marker, demanded that the adventurer was to refreeze him. The adventurer, realizing that they still hadn't got a trophy for Uryoth, manipulated Jhallan into providing one. Jhallan proceeded to curse all adventurers and their meddling ways, and used his last ounces of strength to create a musper tail. The adventurer then allowed Jhallan to return to hibernation, freezing him into a block of ice using a similar spell to the one used to unfreeze him in the first place. As the time for the 18th ritual drew nearer, many Majharrat began to head north. When the time had eventually come, Lucian, using 2 elder artifacts, had established himself as an unofficial leader of the ritual, deeming only himself worthy to decide the sacrifice. After several battles between Lucian and a party of opponents, including the adventurer in question, Majharrat and the delegacy of Temple Knights and Guardians of Armadil, most other Majharrat arrived. Some who had also been absent from previous rituals, such as Azanadra and Akthanakos. Jhallan, however, remained frozen underneath the ritual site. However, it turned out Lucian had somehow become aware of Jhallan's plan. While the other Majharrat were quarrelling, Lucian silenced them and decided to sacrifice his erosion. He then extracted Jhallan from his icy sanctuary beneath, still frozen. Zamorgul and even Freneskae immediately agreed with him, while Khazad and Anakra adamantly demanded that their rivals, Majharrat and Akthanakos respectively, be sacrificed instead, deeming Jhallan too insignificant to even bother with. Majharrat stated that Lucian be the one to be sacrificed, as he actually posed a threat, and proceeded to attack him, consequently being backed up by the other Zeroja Majharrat and the party of humans. Yet another battle broke out between the factions, with Jhallan pathetically struggling in the middle of it, being too weak to free himself or even say anything. Zamorgul soon ran into great trouble when he was attacked by both Azanadra and his former minion Arav. He begged his cousin Lucian for help, but upon being blatantly ignored, he realized Majharrat had been right, and convinced the other Majharrat to focus all attacks on Lucian instead. Everyone present, including the Majharrat, the Barrows brothers, Sir Tifikashan, Idria, and Arav, proceeded to attack him. However, Lucian's immense might allowed him to withstand all of their attacks with ease. But he soon got bored, and he demanded everyone to stop fighting, as it was time for the ritual, and proceeded to sacrifice Jhallan. Jhallan's body disappeared within a flash of bright white light, instantly killing him, and, consequently, causing the other Majharrat to be rejuvenated, while also causing the nearby humans to experience some kind of strange power. So all in all, Jhallan's history is not large, lively, full of life, or any major key points in the history of Gielinor. It was kind of a sad existence, gotta be said. Although we did participate in the wars against the Zerosian forces for the Desert Pantheon, as well as fighting for Zaros, and even getting involved within the Third Age God Wars. Still, we don't really know a lot about Jhallan's actions during the time, which, I suppose, you could either take two ways. Either Jhallan quite literally did nothing and hid himself during this time, or he was incredibly active, and did his job so well that no one actually realized what had happened, and Jhallan just kind of sneakily walked away. Either way, this is another one of the Majharrat brothers. So, with that said, I hope you all enjoyed. This was a story about Jhallan. Until next time people, I will catch you all later. Have a good one.